Lab number 253. In this lab we continue our quick win scenario, and now it's time to focus on fetching data from adapter, and that adapter will get data from a service. We will use one of the public services to generate users to get the data and actually push it to mobile device. So we will start with actually creating the adapter. For that, let's open our terminal, open one more tab, navigate inside our dev workspaces and then HM folder, and using the command line interface type MFP dev adapter create. Now we can provide the adapter name, let it be hybrid or even something like messenger adapter. The type of adapter will be HTTP, so we'll start with creating the JavaScript adapter. The group ID, because this is the Maven project and the type of project for adapter was changed, we need to provide a group ID. So let's type something like com hybrid. It can be any for us for now. And it will create a project inside this HM folder. This project will be looking a bit different from what it was in previous release, but we still see the adapter XML file inside the src folder, which actually defines where we will connect to and the procedures that are inside. And then we have the implementation file inside the JS folder. In our case, it's called messenger adapter impl.js, in which we have several procedures here. So we will need only one. Let's leave it get feed, remove everything else, and remove rename the get feed to something like get employee rating. So this particular function will call the service called randomuser and provide us a list of users that we will use to create the rating list of our messengers. And it won't have any input parameters, so the content type returned will be JSON. This is what the service will return to us. And we will need also to define a path. And in order to define it, first of all, let's take a look on that service. So I will open one more tab. And navigate to random user .me website. So this is the public service. We will call the random user me API and get the data. So let's check their documentation, how to make a proper call. So first of all, we will need to limit number of returned users. So let's have something like 20. And let's also specify the nationality. For example, yeah, let's keep it Great Britain. So net equal to GB, and also we will need to get the results. So the path will look like this. Let's copy these results. And let's also add here not equal to GB. Just like that. Now we also need to change the XML file. As you can see, we have here two procedures declared, get feed, and the second one that we already removed called unprotected. So we will remove from here get feed and use this unprotected to rename it to get employee rating. And we still keep the security setting set to false. So this is the analog of security test WL unprotected. So this is the way how to specify that anybody can call this procedure. We will start with no security and then add security in next steps. So now we can save this file. What else? Well, we need to change the domain protocol and port. So let's start with protocol. It will be HTTP. The port will be just simple 80. And then we will need to change the domain also. So the valid domain is api.randomuser.me. Just like that. So now we can, because we finished the development of our function and also declared that function in XML file, now we can build this adapter and deploy it to mobile first platform server. So to do that, we can go back to our terminal and type MFP def adapter build. So this command, of course, should be launched from the folder of Messenger adapter, otherwise you will get an error like I just did. So let me repeat it. So what it will do, it will actually, together with SRC folder that we already have, it will create a folder called target, and inside this target folder we will have the adapter file that will be deployed later on our server. So here we have this adapter file. And now we can deploy using MFP def adapter deploy. So now our adapter is deployed. We can go to console, localhost 9080 MFP console, and check that our adapter is there. Yeah, we can see the messenger adapter here. So as you can see right here what was changed, and it's really cool that now we can actually update the configuration of those adapters right from the console. So we can change the domain, for example, and the port and things like that, together with additional parameters that were defined in our XML configuration file or implementation file if we're talking about Java, for example. We can see that we have the URL get employees rating for both methods, get and post available. You also can view configuration files right here, which is really cool. But what is even more cooler is that we can click on view Swagger docs, and we can preview these procedures that were declared, and we can actually execute them to see what will return this random user service. So we can type try it out, and hopefully we will get a response. Yes, as you can see, we have a response from our get employee rating URL, and this is the response body. So this is the way also how you can test your adapter right here from the console, which is really cool. So next step for us that we will need to do is actually to call this adapter and get the data inside our application. So let's do that. So the way how we'll do it, we won't be actually doing it inside, for example, our page TS file. Let's make a global service that can be called from any page that will actually get this data from adapter. So in order to create this service, there are two ways. First, manually create it, create a component, export, and so on. The second one, we can use generators from Ionic. They are working quite good, not perfect for now, but quite good. So to use them, we can go back to terminal and navigate to our hybrid messenger project and then type Ionic G, which means generate. Then we need to provide a type of the thing that we are trying to generate. In our case, it's called provider. And then we need to provide a name. So let's call it something like employee service. So it is generated now. We have a providers folder in which, as you can see, we generated employee service. Unfortunately, generator for now do not understand the Typescript, so it generates the JS file. But as I was telling you previously, any valid JavaScript file is valid TypeScript file. For Ionic, we only need to do small changes. So we can rename this employee service GS to TS file. This will be the first step. The second thing is we will need to work a bit on this file. So we don't need HTTP import because we won't be using HTTP service from Angular. We will be using the mobile first platform SDK and API from that, so we can remove the HTTP part. In order to use the things like data, in our case it's variable, when you're using TypeScript you need to define it first. So let's have a variable, something like data with type any. Then this error will go away. So then the next thing that we need to do in order to use this particular service in the future, we will need to first make changes for it to be able to call our adapter, and second, we will need to import it in our app.ts file as a provider, and then to use it in page 1.ts file. So we will start with some kind of login. So we will know that this service is called with the function mode. So let's have here console log, something like, call it employee service. Let's add employee service log. Yeah. Then we will remain this check as is. So the idea is that what we will return back will be data. If the data will be already there, so we previously called the adapter, we won't be calling it second time, we will just check if this data is still there and right away return this data. So as you remember, this data is defined up here. So if the data is not there, we will go down, we will create a promise, let's keep it as is. What will happen is, instead of this HTTP GET, we will use our construction. So first of all, let's define something like data request variable. We will do it using let. So let is an analog of var when we create a variable, but the var is working in Angular 2 a bit different way. It's a bit more global. It doesn't matter where you define this variable, it will be available across all the file. So let is analog of this var as it was previously, like private variable. So let data request equal to new, and then we will use the API from mobile first platform. So as you can see, we have it here, we're able to go through. So WL resource request through auto completion, I've took it. Then we need to provide the URL, and the URL is still the same. So first of all, we need to provide the path to adapters, then the name of the adapter. In our case, it called, what was the name of this adapter? Let me check. Yeah, messenger adapter. So we can call this, we can copy this URL actually, in order not to type it manually. Yeah, so adapters, then the name of the adapter, and then finally there will be a name of procedure that we are calling. And then we need to specify the method, so it will be a WL resource request get, like that. Let me toggle wrap, so it will be easier to follow what I'm typing. And now we can send this request, so data request, then send. And the way how we type then is a bit changed, so now we still can work with response that will be returned at the end, but in order to work with the scope, with this data, in the Ionic 2 Angular 2 way, we need to use this construction. That will mean that we will pass this response and we will work with it. And what we will do is, first of all, we will do some kind of login. Let's say something like adapter response, and then type the response that we got. So as you saw in Spark Docs, we still have some default things like status code and is successful that are returned by adapter. Everything is returned inside response JSON. If we are talking about adapter that is written with JavaScript and returned content type is JSON. And then inside the results, we actually have results of what server returned to us. So the way how we will access it is the same. Response, then response JSON, and then results. So this is how we will get our data. And what we will do with it, we will just assign it to data variable. We can actually copy this code from here. And final step will be to resolve our promise. So using resolve command and then this data, just like that. All that stuff underneath can be removed. Okay, so now we can save our service, and the next step for us is to go and define the services provider. So first we will import it. So the name was employee service, as you remember, and we will import it from providers folder, and then employee service, and again employee service, just like that. And then we also need to define it here as provider in application. So just type providers and then in brackets employee service. That's it. Now it means that this provider will be available for injection in our application later on. So later on means that we will try to inject it inside the page TS. So right here, let's go to page TS. And right here in our constructor, let's try to call that service. So in order to call it, we again need to import it first. So you can type it manually or copy the line from app.ts. So I will do it by copying. Let's actually add dot with comma here. So I copy this line and pass it inside our page 1 TS. Just the path here is now a bit different because we are on a different level. So actually 2 levels back will be the right path. And then we need to actually define dependency to it. So let's have a variable, something like employees, that will be equal to this service. So this is like a reference, and let's have it a private reference. Okay, so private employees, employee service. Now we can actually start loading employees. So let's create function something like load employees. So here it will be called in constructor, and then we will define it later on, load employees. just like that. So let's have here logging, something like called load employees, just for debugging purpose. And the next step that we can do is actually load them. So we can say that this employees, because this is the reference to service, load, this is the function inside, and then we can do something with the result. Type then, we can access results again by providing some kind of response, let's call it data, and the same construction working with the response. We can say that this, and let's call the variable something like items equal to data that we just grabbed. And we will need to define that variable somewhere, so let's have it items here, type any, and just save this file. So you have this message like I have called employee service load, but then no adapter response. Then what you need to do is to follow what I will be doing in a second. If you have the response, adapter response, then you can ignore this step. So basically the issue is that this call is not made directly. If you're using the MFP preview, all the calls, actually this is the by default right now, going through proxy on port 6015. So the thing is that on early dev kit releases, the issue is that with an adapter, if you define security false, you cannot make this call through that proxy. So when you're doing a preview, not the one on emulator, for example, you won't receive any response. If you will run this application on real device on emulator, you will get a response. So in order to get a response right now, we will remove this secured false and keep it with the default, let's say, no security. So we will be able to call it from our mobile first platform SDK, but not from everywhere, like it was with secured false. Actually, we will be able to do this call right now. So what we need to do is to save this file and then redeploy the adapter. So let me open one more tab, navigate to our adapter, and do MFP dev adapter build, and then adapter deploy. And refresh our page. Yeah, so as you can see, there is a response. So if you don't solve that issue at the beginning, please ignore the steps that we did. It was the behavior on early beta versions. So anyway, let's continue from this. So now when we got our adapter response, it's time to show it on screen in some kind of list. So for that, we will use Ionic 2 components. So let's go to Ionic 2 docs. And we will be using a list component here just to display a thumbnail list with the images and everything. As it was before, if you remember, if you extend the screen, you will see here the example of this list on different platforms. And what is cool about latest version of Ionic is that this platform dependent things are rendered automatically. So design will be different, but the code will be the same for each and every platform. So what we will do is we will copy this list, thumbnail list, and actually pass in our page HTML, replacing the content that we have there. Just like that. And we will remove padding also. So here's our list. So first we will modify ion item to do it repeatable based on results that we actually have in items. As you remember, we assigned response data to our items. So here the new construction for analog of ng repeat or Ionic collection repeat will be looking like ng4, and then we need to specify what we are repeating. So we are repeating item inside items. So this will be our reference for a specific item like it was before. And for example, to get pictures, we can say image, the construction analog for ng src will be just src with brackets. And then we can provide actually the path how to get that image. So we can check it from adapter response. You can see that we have inside user, then we have picture, and inside picture we have thumbnail. So our construction will be equal to that. So we will have our item, then we will have our user, then we will have picture, and then we have thumbnail, just like this. So let's see what happened. Okay, yeah, I forgot to mention that it's not in anymore, it's item of items. So the construction is like off now. So let's save and check it once again. Yeah, as you can see, we see in different pictures. So we also need to provide the username. So let's go and check. We have user, we have name, and inside we have first and last. So we can access it like it was before. So our item dot user dot name dot first, and then the same for last. And let's have also here something like what we have as an option. Yeah, username. Let's use the username underneath. Let's pretend that this is something like Twitter account or whatever. So construction will look like item dot user dot username, like this, and we don't need this button. Okay, cool. So we have our list with the first name, last name, and the username. What we are missing is some kind of rating, like who's the first, second, and so on. So we can implement a pretty simple logic. We can just get the index of how it's shown and pretend that this is our rating. So to do that, we can define here our index reference to I. So, and then just, for example, inside the node, Ion node, this is the part of Ionic framework. We can specify that it will be on the right side. And inside this node, we can just calculate the index plus 1, just like that. Okay, so we have our position, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Let's also change the title, something like Our Heroes will be good enough. Okay, and basically one more thing that we want to do is we want to have the first name and the last name starting from capital letters. So we can create some kind of class for that. Let's have class for h2, something like capitalize, and then we can define it inside SCSS file. So text transform, and here we can check the capitalize, just like that. Okay, so it's done. Basically on this step we are finishing our lab, and in the next lab we will add security to those calls.